As a DM, there's nothing more frustrating than spending loads of time, effort and dollar bucks on a beautiful battle map and loads of miniatures only for your party to bugger off in the opposite direction. Well, worry no more, friends. It's the Nerd Theorists! So, as I've mentioned in previous videos, with the introduction of the new rules and the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Handbook and all of the gubbins that goes with it, I've been writing a little campaign. It was supposed to be a one-shot, it's grown a little bit. Anyway, I wanted to set it apart from Hetherius, so instead of using digital maps like Tom does, I wanted to use minis and proper models. The only problem is that knowing what we're like as a party in Hetheria, we have a tendency of going off-piste, as it were. So I didn't want to spend ages and ages making these beautiful dungeons only for that battle to never happen. So I came up with an idea, which I call 3-tier terrain. Yes, copyrighted. So basically, your first tier is just cardboard. It's just a cardboard dungeon, dirt cheap, easy to build, with a grid on the bottom, inch squares for your measurements, and that's it. So that's for your sort of battle where you could knock out a few of them and think, right, this is the woods, this is a dungeon, this is a room, and then you've got them as backup. And if your party never come across them, it doesn't matter because you haven't wasted loads of time. Tier 2 is texturing, using some filler or sand or whatever to give it a bit of texture and make it look a little bit prettier. Again, they might come across it, they might not. At least I haven't spent loads of time on it, but, you know, it looks decent. And then tier 3 is your full cock in the peanut butter, textured, painted, 3D printed models, everything. Full shebang. This is a battle they're definitely going to have. This is an important battle. You're pointing them in that direction. They have to fight them. Maybe prepare for it, you know, next session. Think, oh yeah, they're going to fight this. I'm going to build this one. So this video is me knocking up a little dungeon. Crappy, first of all, cardboard, then textured, then dick in the peanut butter. Full shebang. So, I've knocked my headphones off. Let's have some fun. Right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is get some cardboard. This is just boxes left over from Christmas. It's the corrugated stuff. It's decent, it's solid, and it works quite well. So as you can see, I've already put the grid on it. That's inch squares, your standard D&D measurement. 5 foot is a square. And then you want to outline the shape of your room. So I'm going, you know, I don't want to go square. I'm going a little bit hodgepodge here. Doing a thicker line around the outskirts so I know how big the room's going to be. And then once I've done that, you want to cut out the room, but do not cut directly on the line of the exterior wall because you need to stick some cardboard to make the walls. So give it sort of a centimetre outside the line and cut it out. I decided I wanted to put a door on this just in case I wanted to join it with some other dungeons and make a sort of network. So I've gone for a wall roughly twice the size of a mini, maybe a bit more, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's up to you. And then this end piece here is where the door's going to be, and I've just done a rough archway and cut it out, and that's going to be stuck on for the door. For the walls, you want some more cardboard. Now, this can be as long or as short as the cardboard you have will allow. You can glue lots of bits together. The longer you're better, obviously, but you want to make sure that you can bend the cardboard. So cut it in a way that the corrugated side is bending with the wall. As you can see, I've pointed out here. Cut it the same height as your door if you've put the door in. I'm using the door as a template, so I know it's all the same height. And then measure up and cut it out. Once you've cut it out, you want to then run your finger along it and bend it as much as you can so it curves quite nicely, and then you can lay it on your flat piece, the floor piece, and start shaping it around. Now I'm going to use a hot glue gun for this. You can use any sort of glue, but hot glue gun will obviously set relatively quickly. PVA will hold it, but it might spring back. It's a lot of hanging about, so if you've got a hot glue gun, I would recommend it. Once you've got all of your pieces together, the walls and the doorway, it's just a case of gluing it all on. As you can see, like I said, I'm using the hot glue gun. You just have to hold it down for a few seconds and then it sets in place. It is really useful for doing something like this where you're curving the walls around the corners. You don't have to have a cut piece that goes to the edge and then glue it on. You can just bend it round and hold it in place while it sets, which does save an awful lot of time. This build for this cardboard version has taken probably 10 minutes, maybe not even that. Once I knew what I was doing, it was very, very quick to achieve. And that's it. That is the first tier. That is the quick, easy cardboard build. As you can see, it suits a purpose. It's got the grid on the base, and if you just want your basic, this will do. You could even paint it grey if you wanted to, but I was trying to do this as quick as possible. If you're using models, obviously if you've got miniatures that are really well painted, you might want to make a bit more effort, but this is tier 1 anyway. Okay, moving on to tier 2 now. Once you've got your pretty little cardboard dungeon, you want to get yourself some filler. This is from Pound Savers. I think it was £2 for quite a big tub, and this one is white. It was the only colour they had. Now obviously we want it to look like a dungeon, so I got myself some black acrylic and squirted some in and mixed it up and made it into a nice grey colour. This way you can just slap it all on and you haven't got to worry about painting it if you just want to stop at tier 2. Get yourself a lolly stick or a coffee stirrer, or I think this was from a kebab, possibly some sort of skewer, and you just slap it all on, hodgepodge. It doesn't really matter how much effort you put into it, you are going to texture it afterwards, so just get a decent coating on, not too thick but not too thin that you can see the cardboard through it. And once it's all slopped on, you want to wait about 5 minutes. Don't let it set entirely, just give it a good 5 minutes to just get a bit of a skin on it, and then move on to the next step. Now you're going to add some texture to the rock walls and floor. You can see that it started going slightly lighter in patches where it was thin. This is because it's starting to dry out, so you don't want it to go hard, you just want it to get a bit of a skin on it, because you're going to use some tin foil, and if you do it completely wet it will stick. So get some tin foil, smash it up as best you can so it's textured. Basically it doesn't really matter how you do it, just smush it, but you don't want it flat. You don't want to pound it on a flat surface so the underside is smooth. You want it to be bobbly, and then you're just squidging it all over the walls and the floor. Maybe shape it a little bit so you can get into the nooks and crannies, but you are basically just pressing it against all of the filler that you've just put on to give it a rocky texture. Okay, for the last step of tier 2, you want to put the grid back on the floor. Obviously you've covered up the original drawn grid, so you're going to need to cut one into the filler. Now in hindsight, I went a little bit too fast and hard with this. I used a relatively blunt pencil and I didn't wait for the filler to dry enough for me to do this. So you will notice that I do tear the cardboard in a few places, which then shows through the filler, which isn't ideal. Probably your best bet if you're going to do this is to use a blade. I think would probably be the best bet. Maybe something a little bit thicker, but certainly something sharper than a blunt pencil, and don't tear the cardboard. As you can see, the squares aren't perfect, but the whole point of this is that you are doing it quickly. There's enough of a grid there to show where your measurements are for your movement, and that is the end of tier 2. So that is your textured, slightly better detail than cardboard, but still not going overboard with time and effort. Moving on to tier 3, as you can see I've already primed this with black acrylic, and this is just dirt cheap. Poundland or the Works do it. I think it's like £2 a tube, but it dirt cheap. It's nice and thick, goes on really well. So the full thing is primed in black, and then you're going to do some heavy duty dry brushing. I've mixed black and white together to make quite a dark grey, and then you're going to slop it all over. Now don't go too mad, because you want the black to be in the crevices, so don't put it on too heavily. Like I say, dry brushing, but heavy dry brushing. You want it covering most of the internal section of the dungeon. Now what I forgot to say is, when you are dry brushing, you want to mix up quite a lot of the grey, because you're going to keep using it. What I've done here is just added more white to bring the shade up, and then dry brushed again, but this time not quite as heavy handed, so it just brings out a little bit more of the highlight. And again, you should still have some left over, because you're going to do it again for the next step. So once again, more white, really bring it up this time, really pale grey, and then you're going to dry brush, but really gently. You're just going to go over all the raised areas to really highlight the sticky out bits of wall and give it some really nice shading. Now you should have 4 different colours on here, the black and 3 shades of grey, which will really make the stonework stand out. And because of the texture in it, should go on really nicely. It's really nice dry brushing something with such detailed texture. And then a few details, I think. Just for the final touches, as this is a damp dungeon, I thought we'd add a few shades of green. So I'm using some Citadel colours here from my Warhammer model paint section, and I'm just basically doing the corners. Just a few corners, few bits hanging down from the ceiling, and just a few odds and sods just to make it look a bit mouldy and a bit mossy. And there you have it. That is your completed tier 3. As you can see, I've 3D printed a few crates and tables, and there's some miniatures there from an old D&D campaign that we used to play, and it really does give a good feel to it. Now obviously for quick battles, like I say, just use the cardboard, but all in all this didn't take me very long at all. The plaster took overnight to dry, but apart from that, the build itself probably an hour, maybe 2. Not quite sure, but it is quite a small dungeon, but it was very quick and easy. And apart from the little boo-boo with the grid on the base, I think all in all it turned out quite nicely. Anyway, that's all from us. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in to see more D&D every other Sunday in Hytheria. Thanks for watching.